Morning, everyone, and welcome to our conversation today. My name is Kate Charters, and I'm the chair of SEGRA, which is the acronym for Sustainable Economic Growth for Regional Australia. SEGRA is delighted to welcome you to the 10th of our conversations about COVID-19 and its impacts on regional, rural, and remote Australia. We're pleased that we're fully subscribed for this timely initiative, and it won't be possible to have people talk during the panel discussion. However, there is a chat box in the bottom of the screen and also a Q&A box. And if you could please use those to put in questions and comments that you might like to make, and we can certainly then ask our speakers to comment on these things. We also review all the comments for input to future sessions. This event is being recorded and it will be available on the SEGRA website tomorrow. You'll also notice at the top of the chat box, we've put a link to some of the resources that we've put together that people have found helpful. And this includes some of the materials that have been forwarded by our speakers. SEGRA really wanted to provide a forum where people who live, work and invest in regional Australia could advance the issues impacting on regional, rural and remote Australia. And we're delighted to be offering this series of webinars. And a big thank you to our speakers today, Ben Flynn and Benita Cattalini, for joining us. The idea is to assist in bringing out key opportunities and issues while hearing firsthand from people tackling the impacts of COVID-19 in regional Australia. These impacts are felt across health, the broader economy, education, business, lifestyle and well-being, to name a few. Robert Prestipino from Vital Places has been collating all the key issues and has a visual of that information. So Robert, can I ask you to show your diagram to date, please?
No worries, Kate. I'll just pull that up on the share screen. Okay, just quickly, we started this journey a while ago, end of March, and it was really driven by, I think, a optimistic curiosity about what will the post-pandemic regional Australia look like. And in that case, trying to anticipate in advance what might happen. So in that time, we can look at collecting ideas that might actually come together to form that bridge or transition. So clearly we're still, all of us still very curious about what's happening, and we're getting a lot of great speakers sort of filling in that space. And as it's emerged over the last 5 weeks or so, we've got a collection of thoughts coming together that's been added to sort of week by week. And it's around the notion of certainly that transition will deal with hard infrastructure, but also soft infrastructure networks. And as we build through the ideas, you'll see there is quite a collection across the spectrum now gathered from various speakers. And I'm sure today's panelists will add even more depth and insight from their perspective. I won't go into the details of these for this week, because I sort of do that every second or third session, but that this flowchart is available in the resource area, and it's a live update. As we update it, the link always updates. So what I'll do to keep things rolling, Kate, I'll hand back to you.
Great, thanks very much. And I noticed that one of the boxes that you have in that diagram is communicate, and that's certainly been a recurring theme from all our panelists, the importance of sharing information and rapidly responding to the change of circumstances we find ourselves in. So now if I could turn to Ben. Ben Flynn is the CEO of the Geelong Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your organisation, and then what you see as the key challenges at this point from your perspective? Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Kate. So I've been the CEO of the Geelong Chamber of Commerce for 12 months tomorrow, actually, and it's been an interesting first year. The Geelong Chamber of Commerce has actually existed for 167 years, and we represent over 1,000 members in Geelong. But but at times like this, we've got a broader obligation to the whole business community, and we're certainly fighting for the whole Geelong region. We're hearing, like everyone else, that this is just an extremely difficult time for people. No one could have predicted it. And there's been organisations that have adapted and evolved more successfully than others. But truthfully, we're still only a short way into the crisis. What is it, 3 or 4 weeks? It was not really that long ago that it first sort of came to a head. So as a chamber, this is our opportunity to really stand up, and people are expecting us to do that. So we've been really, really active in terms of hosting webinars like yourselves, and we've had over 250 people on our weekly webinar, our masterclasses, and we're also doing a lot of virtual events now. So we anticipate our first monthly virtual event, which is occurring next Thursday, to maybe have 500 participants online. And we're still going to do, we're still going to have guest speakers. We're going to be able to break people out into groups where they can network with each other and perhaps solve common problems or provide solutions back to the broader audience. So from an engagement point of view, our engagement's probably fourfold stronger at the moment. It's a real opportunity for the chamber to stand up, and people are really engaged. And you're absolutely right. Communicate and provide the right information for people. Our webinars have been so successful because they've really, they've touched on the points that people want to know. In many ways, there's an information overload out there, and it's our job to dissect that and provide information from trusted sources for people on the front line. It's an extraordinary time, and we're just adapting too.
Hey, Ben, I was wondering, when you're talking about the information, what are your members seeing as the most important information at the moment that's most relevant for them?
Cash flow. Yeah, cash flow. The difficulty around JobKeeper payments and needing to increase people's wages and maintain and keep people on even when they may not be eligible for 6 weeks. It's really quite tricky. And also in Victoria, we've got business support packages of up to $10,000 from the Victorian government, and businesses don't know if they're eligible, and they're getting paid in waves. And they're also not aware that they can talk to the banks about deferrals of their obligations and also opportunities to extend, cash flow positive assistance to businesses. So we're really just unpacking that, as well as obviously commercial tenancy and all of those things as they come to light. But practically speaking, so, commercial tenants are people, commercial landlords are people as well, and they've got businesses and families and so on. And to make sure that we're taking the right approach, that we're having the right conversations, instead of, for instance, just suddenly not paying half your rent and expecting a waiver, but more get on the front foot and say, well, how can we work through this together? It's and having people who are in strong positions, such as commercial real estate agents who are partners of the chamber, they're the ones that are speaking on these kind of topics because they're at the front line. And as a result, we've really fostered a really candid, honest conversation here in Geelong, and hopefully people are benefiting from that.
So is it more one of just sort of survival at the moment, the businesses really just scurrying to see what resources they can pull together to survive through the grants and that?
Definitely. As well as then on top of that, how you manage your staff to ensure that, so do you stand down for a period? Do you keep people on as reduced hours? And even that space is changing. You look at Fair Work and the changes to the awards that are kind of happening there. So it's creating, businesses were kind of really encouraged to have honest conversations with their staff around how they, can do the best by everyone and continue the business. But then suddenly the Clerks Awards all change, and businesses are now, likely to be facing kind of questions and scrutiny once this is all over. And I worry about that too.
Thanks very much, Ben. I might bring Benita into the conversation now. Welcome, Benita, and thank you very much for joining our webinar today. Benita is the CEO of the Albany Chamber of Commerce and Industry in southwest Western Australia. So welcome, Benita. Tell us a bit about yourself and some of the key things that have been going on in Albany.
Okay, thank you. I too have only been with the Chamber roughly 1 year here in Albany. We have a slightly different size community than Geelong, so we're a port city, reliant on tourism. Agriculture is about 87% of our GDP. So we have also quite well known for our food and wine and our pristine environment. So the impact of COVID, I guess, has had a significant impact in the same sectors as everywhere else in regional Australia. I guess the difference for each region is just how dependent on each of those sectors the economy is to continue. So prior to COVID here in Albany, we experienced the same things as regional Australia. We were very aware of underemployment. In Albany here, particularly for young people, we have a much higher rate of underemployment in young people than anywhere else in Australia. Our spending was slow. Business investment was not significant, so we were heavily reliant on government spending, which is why I agree with Ben, the concept of grants are really important at the moment. We're actually calling for those sorts of things to be expedited so that those sorts of infrastructure projects that can go ahead do so really quickly. We think that would make a big difference. We have experienced drought in some of our regions, but I guess we should be really thankful that we haven't had to deal with the devastating impact of bushfires that some of our fellow regional areas have had to experience. But our chamber has really focused heavily on getting the right information to the right people at the right time in the last few weeks. That's our key. Our underlying belief is that businesses know best how to plan for themselves as they navigate their way through COVID. And what we needed to do was immediately commence some pulse surveys to help uncover what are those training and support needs in the community, what isn't working in terms of communication. So we identified some very clear directions for ourselves. And hence we've decided that as a chamber, our focus should be on advocating at the moment for how to plan at a regional level so that when we're coming out of the COVID pandemic, that we are best placed to take advantage of any opportunities, but that we also have our finger on the pulse of those sort of hurdles that we might face as we come out in terms of employment. Some people have lost staff because staff left, not because they were stood down or let go, but because the staff themselves panicked and thought, what am I going to do? I'm going to lose my job. I need to quickly go and find somewhere to work different where I might be able to keep my job, or have gone straight to job seeker instead of waiting for the JobKeeper package. Our survey showed a huge difference in confidence between the prior to the announcement of JobKeeper and post. It built confidence enormously. So we believe that 3 levels of government and chambers should actually be coming together right now, and they should be resourcing a regional strategy, and that chambers are an absolutely critical part of that. Local governments don't have the sub-state data necessarily that we need to measure the exact impact of COVID, but they do have those relationships with people that do. State governments with fiscal constraint have had to pull people out of regions, so there's a heavy reliance on chambers to really understand who the business community is. So we're focusing very strongly on advocating for more resource and more energy to put into the development of some regional plans that will really maximise the opportunities as we come out of the COVID pandemic.
Thanks very much, Benita. I suppose that brings me to one of my next questions, which is are you seeing early adopters? Are there some people who are adapting more quickly, and who are those people and what are the things that they're doing?
Yeah, well, in our survey, I guess that gives you the most important, I can give you some actual facts and statistics. Of course, this is just for our one region, but I'm not seeing it being too different to the rest of regional WA through regional chamber surveys and state chamber surveys. So prior to JobKeeper, about 34% of our survey respondents reported losing between 50 and 100% of their staff in that very first week. Since then, and 64% reported at that time that they didn't actually even think that their business was going to be able to survive the pandemic within 12 months. But since that announcement, more than 80% of businesses are reporting that they do believe that they will survive. Almost half of the business reported having supply chain issues, which we think is something we can do something about if we put some focus on it. While confidence has gone up since JobKeeper, demand hasn't gone up. So in our March survey, 68% of businesses reported a reduction in turnover, and in April survey, 76% of them reported a reduction. So that's demand is still going down, obviously, because the restrictions are in place. They're really important. We recognise they have to be there, but that doesn't detract from the fact that that's having a significant impact on demand. Couple that with the record number of online sales that are happening is a real leak in our economy. We think that we need to be really conscious of that in any strategy forward. We also measured who was doing really well during this time. And in March, 5% of our businesses reported an increase in turnover, but in April, only 3%. And so that means that COVID's having that dual effect on demand and supply, which is a double whammy for our economy. It's ugly, which we're all aware of. I'm stating the obvious there. Job losses have continued to escalate. Last week we had one business that lost 100 staff. I guess most people did report that they're able to adapt to cope, but I think that that's different. Like the questions we're asking aren't uncovering the nuances there. People are able to adapt to cope in this environment, but there's a big unknown out there. So knowing about how to adapt and thrive as we come out of it is a different story. So one of the things we're advocating for in any regional strategy is that resource is put to pay local professional services who have the expertise and the local knowledge and understanding of our economy, give them resource to offer free support to businesses experiencing hardship so that they can plan their way out of this pandemic. That forward-looking sort of approach we think is exactly what's needed now. Remember, we said we believe that businesses know best, so let's give them the right information from the right people at the right time right now to plan forward how we're going to cope with the post-pandemic demand, because it is going to spring back. I guess more businesses reported that they can access the stimulus package, so we know we're getting the right information to people. But similarly to Ben, just under 20% of our latest survey respondents said that they still are unsure about whether or not they can access some of that support. So we know we have to do more in that regard. We need to redouble our efforts to get the right information out there.
Good, thank you very much, Benita. Ben, what are you seeing in terms of early adopters versus the laggards? Are you seeing some things coming out in Geelong?
Yeah, definitely. There's people who have really quickly evolved their businesses, and I don't know truthfully if they've learned how to make money out of here, but they're continuing to be really relevant during this crisis. Which puts them in the best position, as Benita said, to be thriving when we come out of this. A lot of people have, there's performers or entertainers that are delivering services online. There's restaurants that are doing deliveries and all sorts of nifty activations to engage with people. But I haven't seen a lot of people who've developed something that I think, and this is only, because we're still kind of new and people are still a little bit shell-shocked, but anyone who's totally reformed their business to the point that it's a successful model moving forward, I think they've still got work to do in regards to that.
Yes, we've just got a comment here from Tasmania saying, firstly, that they're enjoying this conversation, but also that the Tasmanian state has responded by providing for businesses access to professional services and support, so financial and business advice. Are you finding much demand for that sort of support from your businesses at the moment?
Definitely. And look, the Chamber are doing it. So we've got a Members for Members campaign called Helping Hands, where people can donate, for example, a couple of hours of legal advice or cash flow advice and so on, which has been really successful. On top of that, the City of Greater Geelong has provided vouchers for similar services, where businesses can sign up and get access to, whether it's HR advice, legal advice, accounting advice as well. So there is all of that out there. I think I worry that people, there's a lot of self-interest probably, and that's not self-interest particularly in the business community, but I worry that regional Australia will be sort of considered second to the metro areas in terms of government support and responses. I think we need to be advocating hard, as Benita said, to make sure that the bush narrative or the regional narrative is really strong at this time, because it's we really need help. We need the governments to continue to commit to the infrastructure projects they'd committed to just a month ago to drive employment and benefits across our community, as well as we need the basic stimulus and support that they're kind of putting out weekly, but we need it to be targeted to the regional areas without being distributed to, I suppose, metro representatives who are then in charge of distributing to the regional areas.
Yes, always a problem, and we're developing out of each of these webinars a communique which we're forwarding to government over what some of the key gaps are or needs, and how best to reach out to regional Australia. Tell me about your main street. What's that looking like at the moment, and what do you see that moving forward when we're coming out of COVID-19?
What was that? The main street?
The main street, yes. How's your main street been affected? How visible is that? And where do you see that going as COVID-19 plays out?
So the city centre of Geelong.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, it was bizarre. I was in there because we're all working from home as an organisation, as most people are in Geelong, and I went in there a couple of days ago to pick something up from the office, and it was a surreal experience. Everything was dark and all the lights were off and the street was empty. All the shops and restaurants are closed in our main streets. Most of them are shut throughout our major shopping centres, and there's not many people around. How will they survive? The truth is, I don't know. Concepts like commercial real estate and retail and shop fronts and so on, are they a thing of the past? I don't know. Similarly with large businesses having, I don't know. If I was an accounting practice and I had 100 accountants, I'd probably be thinking, do I need to provide an office space for all 100 of them, or just 30 of them and they come into the office 2 days a week and work from home 3 days? It's I think commercial real estate and the city centre are going to cop a pretty big hit from this. I think it'll be a while before confidence returns in that traditional shop front sort of philosophy.
So, Benita, what are your thoughts on that issue?
Our main street businesses are adapting as best they can. So slightly differently, I guess, being in a really small bottom corner of Western Australia that's isolated, and our borders are closed except for special circumstances. Businesses are trying to use social distancing. We still have cafes trying to operate from their front door. We're still having a lot of businesses have started doing home delivery. We have campaigns, obviously, to support local businesses in that. So a lot of our people who are stuck at home are getting takeaway and using those delivery services. It's not enough. It's like I said, people are adapting. We've got businesses in the Great Southern, 3 of them that are producing hand sanitizer. We just had our local independent IGAs, 2 of them, purchase face masks, managed to source a shipment of a significant number of face masks. We've got people adapting for the current situation, and our main street is looking very, very quiet like the rest of Australia. But we are really devastated because just prior to the impact of COVID, we'd put a significant impact into that soft infrastructure investment. So we had town teams. I'm not sure if you've had them come along. They may be fantastic to have to one of these webinars if you haven't had them already. But they talk about that difference between the soft infrastructure in a main street and the hard infrastructure. Local governments are fantastic at building hard infrastructure. We've got a beautiful main street. Our local government has it looking great. But town teams is really about investing something that I don't think in a post-COVID environment that all the beautiful streets are going to make much difference. It's going to be people coming together, reconnecting as we come out of that, providing opportunities for lots of events, for lots of connectivity, for lots of festivals. And I think that for us, that's where, again, I'm saying we need to look at what's going to bring us out of that. We need to be prepared for those, because I think that soft infrastructure is what's going to really bind us and bring us out of this this situation.
Do you see what's your communication with council at the moment? Is it in the survive or revive mode at the moment? Have you got a sense of where people are coming from, some timeframes?
Local governments are really in a difficult situation. They can't access JobKeeper. So they are faced very much at the moment inwardly at the moment. So whilst they're reaching out and recognising that they need to work together, unlike a chamber, a local government's often much bigger, have a significant number of staff, have to deal with IR issues around the job loss, have to redo their budgets like all of us. I guess for them, we sit back as a chamber and think, well, we have a rather more intimate relationship with the business community, so we have a lot to bring to future strategies. Something that I think there's room for is more collective work. So our local government has lots of great intent, and whilst we're patiently waiting as they sort their internals out, I think leadership really needs to step out and look outwardly and look towards each other and identify what they can do. Local government rates are guaranteed, so we can't say the same of our membership. We've gone from over 600 members to just under 500 members, and that's a hit. It's a hit for us. We're right there in the trenches with the businesses. We know how they're feeling. But we know the value of chambers, and just like every region, every single chamber is unique and different. You can see the difference between Ben's chamber and mine, and it's the same across all the regions. But what they are is little gems. They're little gold mines of information. If you are a state or a local government and you're not intimately working with your chamber to design strategies as you go forward, then you might not be hitting the mark. And I've worked for a long time in government with state and Commonwealth governments, and I understand how ministers need to hit the broad mark. They need to hit for the best good of many people. And sometimes they miss that a strategy at a regional level that may appear a bit bizarre to them. And they think, why would you want to do that? Or they might see it as opportunistic or someone just grabbing for a project. And they don't realise that people at the local level know just what an investment in a particular project will have in terms of impact. And I'll use a very real example down here. It's not in Albany, it's in Bremer Bay, which is further east on the coast. They put in an application for an expansion of their abalone farm. It's a tiny town, a coastal town, massive job losses, huge impacts, and yet if that grant was given, then there would be 35 jobs produced within 1 month. So, you know, a minister could be forgiven for thinking that if we're all advocating for that, to hurry up and grant that because that'll help that whole community. They might be thinking, oh, they're just being opportunistic. But I think what we really need is for ministers to open the hearts and minds. Chambers don't have the authority and power to call people to account. We have the knowledge, the understanding, we have the relationship with communities. And I think that that it's really important that like you said, that what's missing is that regional level strategy for bringing us out.
Oh, Benita, following on from that point, what do you think we have to do differently to achieve that regional strategy you're talking about? You know, what practically, because clearly we haven't been doing it well prior to COVID. You know, we've got ahead there. What are we going to do differently to make it work?
I can only give my personal view on that. So my chamber doesn't have a particular position, but having worked in community economic development for some time, for me, it's about leadership. So at the moment, it's pretty hard to work out who's zooming who in a zoo. So it's like, well, who's the person developing the strategy around here? Who's holding people to account? Who's holding the bucket of money? So we have state government, we have Commonwealth government, all with staff in our regions. And I'm wondering who's the right leader. Is it local government? I don't think it's the chambers, because we don't have the power and the authority. So we really need to have some form of leadership at that regional level to bring us out, to hold everybody to account for actions that they can take, that, you know, that they're willing to take, and then to also help resource that and make sure that we support each other to take those actions as we move forward. A greater voice for business is really important, and to do that through the chambers is really important. I think that I've seen local governments funding chambers membership. I've seen so many different, I mean, we heard from Ben some really fantastic actions that are happening. That's great, but that's just, again, dealing with the here and now. But if we want to come out of this and have a huge opportunity to strengthen our regions, I think we have to be more strategic about that.
Ben, what are your thoughts on that from your context?
Look, in relation to our relationship with the local government, they've been really good. And this gets back to sort of Kate's original question. We've been working really closely. Pretty much the one great thing about the regional communities is how connected you are to everyone. So literally during a crisis, the gloves are off. We're all talking and we're all trying to do our best to support our members in the community. I will say that, with the local government, they're probably implementing schemes that would probably be best implemented through the chamber, for example. Whether that's their business support programs and so on, we could have probably done that, more effectively. But at the same time, they're people and they just want to have ideas and implement things, and then we're promoting them, I suppose, so that our members can take them up. So go ahead, Kate.
Oh, I was just wondering what sorts of information that you're finding the demand for your webinars. What are businesses looking at? That's one of my first questions, or wanting. And I suppose the other thing is getting back a little bit to those early adopters. There are people who are just trying to survive through this process, but survival is probably not going to be enough in terms of the changes that are happening. Is your community ready to move to the revive stage, or do you think that they're still very much in the bunkering down, survive stage?
I think so the stimulus package is effectively run through to the end of September. I think there will be a lot of hunkering down over the next 5 months. Preparing to survive beyond the stimulus packages is a much tougher job, I reckon, because I think we're going to see a long period of of slow growth and a long period of people exiting the market and failing to evolve. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah. No, I guess I'm feeling a bit that's the point it's at the moment, is that many aren't going to survive. We've just got a comment which I'll add in here, which is that councils trusting chambers is critical. Have you got something you'd like to say about that?
Oh, look, I think it's absolutely clear. The City of Greater Geelong actually holds the Geelong Chamber in high esteem. So I couldn't be critical of that. The fact that we have those personal connections with so many businesses and that we're trusted, we are much more trusted by businesses than what they would trust the councils for obvious reasons. And we don't have any political allegiances and so on, so we're apolitical. So, and we really are, to be honest, 100% members first. You know, we don't have any hidden agendas. We're just out there fighting for our businesses and our members at the moment. And people are recognising that. And we're really relevant because of that.
I wonder, just a general question about chambers, that, you know, prior to COVID and that, there was a bit of a feel that, you know, are chambers in transition? Are they still needed? Is a different structure, particularly in regions, and the online sort of shopping and all that sort of it. Any comments from either of you about your feelings about where chambers are now? Are they in transition? Have they transitioned enough? Because the post-COVID world is different for all of us. What are your thoughts about what should be the best chamber structure or process going forward?
It's an interesting discussion. I think that there needs to be better connectivity between all of the chambers. That makes total sense to me, including better connectivity with, in our case, Victorian Chamber of Commerce and Melbourne Chamber. I think any membership organisation, whether it's a footy club or a golf club, who actually has annual renewals where people stump up some money to be part of the team, is a really is a traditional model that is under threat, because there's so many competing organisations or interests that are, you know, that are trying to get people's money, and I think it's a real risk to rely on the fact that people are going to continually or annually pay you a certain amount of money, irrespective of whether you deliver value.
Benita, your thoughts on that too?
Yeah, I was noticing a comment to answer that question, if I can beg a bit of indulgence here. Noticing a comment from Benita, and she's absolutely right. She's saying that rates, you know, I probably misrepresented that a little bit. Rates, when I say some form of rates is guaranteed, but not the level of rates. You're absolutely right. Local governments are vulnerable at the moment also. What I think, and why am I using that to answer this question, is it's what we've just been talking in the last 5 minutes. It's about roles and responsibilities. So Ben articulated how the Geelong City Council sometimes are doing things that perhaps a chamber can do, and it's only because everybody wants to do the right thing by business and we all have this shared agenda. Absolutely. Our City of Albany is exactly the same, out there doing websites for hot tips for business, when really we might think to ourselves, oh, wouldn't that resource be better placed with the chamber now so we can do more to support our members? But at the same time, we recognise why they're doing that. This is why I think that it's really important to strategise together. So I've used an analogy here when I talk to our regional leaders, and I'm not always popular when I talk about it, but I talk about it as if our region is like this big Olympic swimming pool, and we've got all these amazing leaders on the block, and they really are amazing leaders. But they're all jumping into that pool and swimming like crazy at the moment to do the best things that they can. But quite frankly, if you're all swimming in one direction, often there's a duplication. So the role of chambers and how they fit into the regions is not just a conversation for business, because business will tell us what we need to do. If we're not doing it, they won't be members. We're in that different position I talked about earlier. If I'm not meeting what my members need, then I'll start losing members. So I need to make sure I'm providing what they want. But at the same time, I also want to develop a relationship because I want to be one of those leaders on the blocks too. But I don't want to just be running flat out doing things for business while I look over and discover that someone else is doing a similar thing. I want us to pull all those lines out of that pool and do some synchronized swimming. We need to work in harmony, and we need to answer that question. We need to say, what is the role of the chamber? Which resources can we divert to the chambers who have the capacity and capability to do it? It's a conversation. It's a really important one. If a chamber, and every one of them is unique to their region, so it has to be a decision that's made at the regional level. We can't start thinking about treating chambers like we do government departments or extensions of government departments. It will fail if we do that because they're unique, they're special, and they have unique and special information that's really valuable. You can't just dictate that they all behave under a type of model.
We've just got a couple of comments here about the importance of communication. This is just coming up time and time again because there's so much information out there and so much that's going on. We're running out of time, so I might just flick quickly to Ben. And the other comment that was made is that the more regional you are, the harder it is to get momentum around Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So you might like to comment on that. But I guess if you, there were 3 things that you would be saying to businesses to be focused on today, what would they be, Ben?
Cash flow would be number 1.
Yep.
And I think businesses are, but certainly, yeah, making sure that they can keep as much cash in their pockets as they can. Secondly, I do like the idea of if they have the luxury to be focused on all of those tasks they've put off during their busy operations. For example, updating their website, their terms and conditions, their agreements, and things like that we've all put off. Let's be honest, I'm the same. And focus on a lot of those business improvement tasks. And thirdly, try to improve themselves. So make sure they're involved in webinars, they're listening to TED Talks, and using it as an opportunity to prepare themselves to thrive after this. I think as people, we need to see hope, and we need to remain connected. And doing all of those things ensure that we are connected. They would be my 3 top suggestions.
No, that's great. Thanks very much. Benita, have you got anything you'd like to say just in closing remarks?
My 3 things would be stay connected to each other and to information. Stay well informed. Don't go to Facebook for your information. Stay really well informed, and most important, stay safe.
Thanks very much. That's been a really, really good session. So thank you very much, Ben and Benita, for your contributions, and for the Chambers of Commerce and Industry for the work that they are doing in regional Australia. So look, thank you both for your participation. We will circulate a communique that captures the ideas in today's conversations and remarks in the chat box. And one was, could you provide access to the pulse surveys?
They're on our website.
Okay.
www.acci.com.au.
Terrific. Thanks very much for that. And we'll put that in our resources list as well. So we also have our latest news section on the SEGRA website. Under the general button, we've put together some useful websites, particularly to target the comment Benita made. Make sure you're looking up your information from credible and reliable sites. So if you'd like to contact me directly, my email is kate@segra.com.au and Roberts is robert@vitalplaces.com.au. You'll see in the chat box references to links to the information that we have and useful websites. On Friday, we'll be hearing from author Phil Preston and public servant Donna Argus, a state public servant, about some programs that they've done in regional New South Wales around the issue of collaboration, another timely topic. So thank you all very much for your participation, and we look forward to speaking with you again on Friday. And thank you again, Ben and Benita.